everybody. I think that we are now live here on Facebook in the TEFL Development Hub. Hope that you're all having a fabulous day so far on this Thursday. And we've got a little flurry of webinars, live streams at the moment. So this is number 2 in 3 weeks of live streams. And it's another one of the fabulous Innovate ELT sessions that I came back raving about after the event in May. Still, again, if you get the opportunity to go to Innovate, do, it's great. And so today joining us is Tim Warre, and he's going to be talking about atomic habits. So hopefully you can all get inspired to change some of your habits. Feel free to drop messages in the box about in the comments box about what your habits are that you'd like to get more habitual. And yep, and if you saw yesterday's Wednesday question, you'll see that Tim has a fabulous blog resource bank with lots and lots of materials. So do check that out as well. I'll share it in the comments afterwards. Okay, Tim, over to you. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
No worries. Thank you very much. Okay, so as Teresa just said, this is the session I gave at Innovate ELT. And hopefully it's a good time of year when everybody's resting a little bit, thinking about the new year. It's a good time to start thinking about habits you want to change yourself, but also habits applying this system of atomic habits to our classrooms and language learning. It's interesting, actually, Innovate ELT, after the talk, I had lots of teachers come up to me saying, well, I'm inspired to change their own personal habits more than applying it to their students, which was really nice. And lots of people came out and showed me that they'd bought the book on Amazon the night before as well. So I should ask James Clear, the author of the book, for a percentage. Okay, so the aims for today's session, we're going to look at the framework for habit formation that comes from James Clear's Atomic Habits. We're going to look at what he describes as the 4 laws for habit formation. So ways that you can form healthy habits, good habits, and also ways that you can get rid of less healthy habits. And we're going to look at ways to specifically apply these to language learning, using them inside and outside of the classroom. We're also going to present some materials that you can use in the new year in the classroom to support the use of the framework. Some of the materials are already available on the blog. If you don't know the address, it's here, freeenglishlessonplans.com. I will signpost which ones are already available on the blog as we go through the talk. This whole sort of project for me is a work in progress, and I'm slowly sort of releasing lesson plans and support materials through the blog that you'll be able to see popping up over the next few months. So let's take a look at the book and the general idea of the book to begin with. The idea is making tiny 1% improvements, these atomic habits, like at an atomic level, very small improvements that compound over time. The idea being that if you get 1% better at things every day, over the course of a year, you're going to see a huge improvement that compounds over time. And it's a system yet to incorporate new habits into your life and also eradicate old ones. So James Clear uses the example to define atomic habits of Dave Brailsford and British cycling. So for British cycling pre-2003, they'd had nearly 100 years of mediocrity. They'd basically won like 1 gold medal, I think it was. Yeah, 1 Olympic gold medal and no Tour de France wins from 1908 to 2003. And they actually had the situation where manufacturers of the best bikes refused to sell bikes to the British team. They couldn't have access to the best bikes because these manufacturers didn't want to see British riders, mediocre riders, riding their bikes. So they're really in a not very great situation. Then 2003 was when Brailsford was hired to overhaul the team. And he basically implemented atomic habits, this idea of the aggregation of marginal gains. If I change and improve lots of small things, breaking elements of cycling down into individual constituent parts, and then improve each area by 1%, and then reap the benefits. So, for example, some of the marginal gains that they looked at, some of the elements they looked to improve, were quite obvious. Things you'd think like redesigning the bike saddles for comfort. Okay, seems obvious. Also did things like rubbing alcohol on the tires to improve grip, and making the riders wear heated overshorts to maintain muscle temperature. So far, pretty obvious, but obviously ways that you can improve things. Also, they're using lighter, more aerodynamic racing suits as well. Then there are less obvious things that they started to do. So things like using lots of different massage gels, and looking into muscle recovery, finding the exact perfect one to enhance muscle recovery. Also, this is the time, obviously, pre-COVID, where we didn't know how to wash our hands properly. They hired a surgeon and taught the riders how to wash their hands. Maybe they sang happy birthday twice and washed them for 20 seconds to avoid them getting ill. So they didn't get ill during their training, didn't get ill during competitions, to avoid these things. They also, this is a good one, determined the optimum pillows and mattresses to ensure good sleep. I did this a little while ago, bought myself a new pillow, best thing I ever did. I'll get a good pillow. And they also painted the inside of the trucks used to transport the bikes white. Okay, so they used to be painted in darker colors. They painted them white so they could spot little bits of dust and dirt that could possibly get on the bikes. The dust and dirt they're very highly tuned racing bikes, and even little bits of dust and dirt can affect the performance of the bikes. Okay. The results of these marginal gains, so 5 years later, after he was appointed in 2008, they won 60% of the gold medals available, their cycling team. And in London 2012, they set 9 Olympic records and 7 world records. They had 5 Tour de France victories in 6 years, from 2012 to 2017. And in the 10 years, 178 World Championship medals, 66 Olympic or Paralympic medals, and 5 Tour de France victories. So this system seems to have worked. So what we're going to look at during this talk is trying to think of, we have these finding the best massage oils, teaching cyclists how to wash their hands, buying them new pillows, painting the inside of the trucks white. What are their second language acquisition equivalents? Okay, what are things that we can do to help? Habits we can encourage our students to acquire that could have similar effects in the classroom and outside of the classroom. More on this later. We're going to talk a little bit about habits of effective students later on. Just quickly, like my inspiration for getting into this, trying to apply this to this system to language learning was just me randomly reading the book in February last year. Randomly, it was suggested to me by Audible. The Audible algorithm suggested to me. I thought, oh, I'll try that. I'll read that. And I applied it to start waking up at 6:15 a.m. in the morning rather than 9 a.m., which is what I used to do. Start a fitness regime. I got into going to the gym. Never used to be going into a person who went to the gym at all. I've managed to combat procrastination quite successfully. This talk, for example, when I was preparing it for Innovate, I actually managed to prepare it slowly, bit by bit, over a course of 2 or 3 weeks, rather than a mad dash the night before, which was my old system. Also, things I've used it to improve meal prep and eating healthier, building my Spanish vocabulary. I'll show you some of the habits I've acquired for building Spanish vocabulary later. Also doing things like journaling, reading every night, going to bed earlier. So I saw that it worked for me, and I immediately thought this has to have some applications in the classroom as well. I make my bed every morning as well, although I don't think I did this morning. Terrible. It's August, it's fine. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about my target habits at the moment. So I've used the system to take on some of those good habits before, but I actually have some other habits I'm trying to change at the moment. I want to be a more confident Spanish speaker. I have to use it every day for work, and a lot of you will have a similar experience, but you're never 100% happy with the fluency of your speaking in Spanish or in another foreign language. So I've decided that I'm going to study some more Spanish idiomatic language. It's one of my target habits. Using Quizlet for part of it. I've got this one here, Darren Claro. I'll share this link to a very big Quizlet set of Spanish expressions later on in a QR code, so you can use it if you're also learning Spanish. I also want to be a more effective teacher and materials designer. So I want to do further reading on behavioral change, memory, and evidence-based teaching. So I bought these 2 books. I'm slowly working my way through. In the face-to-face talk, I had people discuss what some of their target habits were with a partner, but I just want you to think to yourself of 1 or 2 target habits that you have or you would like to get into, and maybe post it in the chat on the live stream as a comment. Just while I'm speaking, have a little think about that and share some that you have personally. Okay, so let's have a quick look at habits and behaviors of successful learners. So when I was preparing this part, I thought my plan was, I'm going to do some research into successful learners and what they do. And I started trying to do it, and it seemed like, I don't know if anyone else has done sort of a look into research and evidence into second language acquisition theory. It's wonderful, there's so much of it out there, but there's a lot of it, it's very complex. And it seems to be one study suggests one thing, other study suggests another thing. I didn't have a lot of time, so I just thought, I know what successful learners do to a certain extent from observing successful learners in my classroom. So I thought, I'm going to observe them, think about what they do that the less successful learners don't do, and try and distill these ideas of habits of successful learners down into some key habits that they have. So last year, I had a C2 proficiency group, a mixture of sort of university-age students, a couple of older adults in general. They're a lovely group with some some lovely students with some very successful language learners as well. One of them is called Joanne. He is studying literature and philology at university, which is cheating. English philology, I think, it's cheating. He's learning about English every day. But he came in and said, I've just been reading this book, this play called Look Back in Anger, which I don't know if you know it, is a post-war British bit of like kitchen sink drama, which I studied at university when I studied drama. Wow, like you're 19 and you're tackling like this, really sort of impactful British literature, reading it in your free time and as part of your studies. This is some quotes from Joanne's writing, just to show that, obviously he reads a lot in English and it rubs off, it shows in his production. So I was having them write the typical proficiency writings. This was a letter of complaint. And he said, the staff looked at me as if I was some kind of nuisance to them. So it's like, wow, very good, Joanne. I didn't teach them that word. This was one about an article about a sports person, and he chose to write about a famous chess player. And he said he was always on top of his game, managed to pull off stunning victories by employing risky but effective moves that befuddled his opponents. So it shows in his written production, that he reads a lot. He also once scored 36 out of 36 in a proficiency reading paper. So obviously that reading outside the classroom, I've never seen a student get 100% on a proficiency reading paper before. Another one of my students, Laia, who's an English teacher, she's a very avid reader as well. She actually has a tattoo with a line of dialogue from the play Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett. So it shows you how into literature and reading she is. She also keeps an Excel of emergent language from class. So I'll show you a screenshot of her Excel. So she has like tabs of different, like categorized by lexis and function at the bottom, things like prepositions, linkers, frequencies. And she fills this in at night when she gets home after each class. So keeping track of the prepositions, stuff like drag on, continue at tedious and unnecessary length, nod off, drop off. And she creates this and then she shared it with the rest of the class as well. So it's like showing real commitment to typing up your notes, processing content from class. I know not all students are going to do this, but it's definitely a very good habit. Also, we have Jose, who's a life coach and meditation instructor. He listens to Radio 4 podcasts and BBC World Service. He's asking me for podcast recommendations. He rewrites all his compositions, taking into account my corrections, which is something all my students are supposed to do. But Jose is one of the only ones who actually does it. Actually, types it out again with all the corrections. Also, something that I've noticed that he does is he shadows or he mirrors new words that come up in class after I say them. So you'll see him sort of mumbling, whispering to himself a word that's come up. And I really wish I'd picked up on it earlier, because I only told him in May when we were towards the end of the course. I noticed him doing it and I said, it's a really good habit you have. And he was like beaming, very happy about it. And I wish I'd told him in October and convinced my other students to do it. But now I'm going to, in the new year, it's something I'm going to introduce as a habit I want all my students to get into. Just sort of mirroring, shadowing, to really get their mouths around new vocabulary. So I boiled down sort of their habits into some habits of successful learners. I think all three of them read, listen, and watch English content extensively for pleasure. Okay, no, it's not rocket science. We know that consumption of English content has a knock-on effect on your level of proficiency. They view English as a vehicle for their interests, not just a subject to learn. I think a lot of people, especially sort of teenagers, just view English as another subject at school. Okay, some sort of knowledge that they have to acquire or knowledge that you as a teacher have to transmit to them. They don't view it as sort of a living, breathing vehicle for their interests, something that can transmit something they're interested to them. They take and maintain good notes. They review their notes and recycle new language in some way. They take advantage of any time to practice. Okay, they're the ones who I sent them all. I've got lots of sort of folders of extra work that they can do. They're the ones I know from Google Classroom. They're the ones clicking on most of the links and using most of the stuff. The shadow teaches speech for pronunciation and memorization, like I just said. So that's some good habits of successful learners, I think, we can boil down. So that's an idea of what these habits could be. We're going to look at some later on in detail, some suggested ways or materials you can send to your students to help them get into these habits. But first of all, we're going to look at the system from the book for acquiring new habits. James Clear talks about the 4 laws of behavior change for creating a good habit. So for example, you say, I want to be an intellectual. Okay, this is your change you want to make, sort of based on a sort of idea of your identity. Okay. What does an intellectual do? An intellectual reads widely every day. So you think, okay, if I want to become more an intellectual, this is a habit I need to acquire. So, for example, the first law of behavior change, if we're trying to acquire this new habit, acquire this new identity, you want to make it obvious. So make the cue, the thing that makes you do this habit, happen. Make it as obvious as possible. So, for example, you place a book on your pillow every morning. So you make your bed in the morning and put your book on top of the pillow. So then when you get into bed at night, you've got to either chuck the book on the floor to go to bed or pick up and be like, okay, I should read a few pages of my book. It's right here. It's right there. I'm supposed to be doing this. The second law is to make the new habit attractive. So you use something called temptation bundling, which we'll talk about in detail later. So you say that, okay, after I've read 3 pages of the book, I get to check Twitter. We shouldn't really be checking Twitter in bed, but, something that you get as a reward afterwards. The third law is to make it easy. So again, putting the book in bed also completes this law. Okay, it's right there in your bed on top of your pillow. so it's very easy to pick it up and read. And the fourth law is to make it satisfying. Okay, now maybe reading the book in itself could be satisfying itself, feeling that you're learning, feeling you're progressing. But we can also make it satisfying by doing things like using habit tracking apps, ticking off every day, or bullet journals. You have to keep your streak going. Something I've done as well is setting a reading goal on Goodreads. If anyone's got Goodreads, I set myself a goal at the start of the year. Okay, I want to read 30 books in a year. And then you can track and see how far you're doing, and it gives you a little bit of information like, you're 60% through your goal, and you're like, well, it's June, I'm 60% through my goal, I must be doing okay. Okay, so we're going to look at all the laws in order now. So the first one, make it obvious. So this is stuff like in the book, James Clear talks about things like leaving a fruit bowl on the side. You want to eat healthier, leave a fruit bowl on the side, don't leave a box of biscuits on the side. Put the book on your pillow. Leave your guitar, if you want to play more guitar, leave your guitar next to the sofa in a very obvious place, so that when you're sat down on the sofa, you just pick it up and you start strumming. Okay, so we say make the cue that causes the desired habit obvious, very visible, in a place where you're always passing through. Put the fruit bowl right by a place where you always pass. You're like, an apple, I'll grab it. So looking at making it obvious, the first law, how can we apply this in the classroom? So this is a lesson you can use for the very first class of the year. I need to make sure that I create this lesson plan and put it on the blog before the first class of the year, because it's not there yet, but it will be. This is a lesson plan you can use as an icebreaker, and a way you can start the year in September or October establishing a habit framework. And it's called the habit score sheet. This is actually an activity from the book you can use to analyze your habits first, but I've adapted it for use in the classroom. So the first thing you have to do is write down your morning routine. The first 5 to 6 things you do in the morning, and you have to be very honest. Okay. So, for example, this is my old habits. I don't do this anymore. This is my old reading the book habits. I wake up, I snooze twice, I read the BBC football gossip column, I go to the toilet, I make my breakfast, and I eat breakfast while watching YouTube, then check Twitter. Then I make coffee, then I drink the coffee, then I start writing. As I work from home, I'm writing teaching materials every day. So this is my old list of habits for the morning, my morning routine. So in the classroom, what you can do is get your students to do this in pairs. Okay, you have to go through their normal routine and be very obvious. Show them your habits first. Okay, highlighting some of the maybe slightly negative things you do, being very honest. Then so we get them to do it in more detail. This works as an icebreaker. Okay, you put them in pairs, get them to compare their habits, open up a little bit, be a bit professional, and get them to give them like a task, make it a bit task-based. They have to find 3 things they have in common, 3 good habits they have in common, 3 bad habits they have in common, for example. Then you get them to look at their habits again and decide which one is a good habit. Mark it in green. Which one is a neutral habit? Okay, wake up, neutral. I think go to the toilet, neutral. We've all got to do it. And which one is a bad habit? Okay, so go through and mark them. So for example, for me, waking up, neutral. Snooze twice, bad. We know this is not supposed to be good. Breaks our sleep cycles, never seems to actually make us feel more rested. Shouldn't really be reading the BBC football gossip column in bed on my phone before getting out of bed. Go to the toilet, make breakfast, eat breakfast, all fine. Maybe while watching YouTube, not the healthiest thing I could do with my time. I could be doing something else. Check Twitter, probably not good either, especially not anymore. It's gone down the pan, definitely. Make coffee, drink coffee, start writing, actually start work. That's a good habit, right? So this is my analysis of my old habits. So they go through and analyze habits for good habits, neutral habits, bad habits. In You have to be honest. You're calling yourself out and saying, well, yeah, you know, snoozing's not good for me. And it's making your bad habits obvious, okay? Making it obvious to you where things could change. And then you think about and get your students to think about what changes they want to make to their routine. How do you want your morning to look? Okay, and we're talking about 1% changes. It doesn't have to be a drastic overhaul. Now I get up at 5 a.m. and I drink, I don't know, 12 raw eggs and I do 60 push-ups. No, it has to be little 1% changes. Okay, 1% improvements. So this is taken from my journal when I started using the habit system. Okay, and this was my new plan. So slightly different. Wake up before 9. Okay, no snooze. Exercise first, then have a shower, get dressed properly. I work from home, and this whole idea of, you know, you're supposed to get up and have a shower and put on proper clothes before you go to work, not go and work all day in your dressing gown or just in your pants. Make the bed, make breakfast, tidy up after making breakfast. Okay, start working, then have coffee later. Okay, and then have a snack brought from home was one of my other ones. I was spending lots of money on chocolate croissants and cafe con leche out, so I had to bring a little Tupperware from home. Okay. So the idea is you get students to do this in class, think about what their new plan could be, make some small changes to their habits, discuss them with their partner. And we're basically building up to this question: when do you have time to work on your English? So they always say, oh, I don't have time. And I was just like, well, you've just said that you spend 20 minutes in the morning on Instagram in bed. You know, you could spend 5 minutes on Quizlet, learning some English idioms, for example, or reading a book. Okay. So, and then we can say to them, okay, all you need to do is learn one expression a day. Remember, we're starting small, 1%. Okay. Go open up Quizlet and learn one idiom, or read one article on The Guardian, or one page of a book. Okay, one paragraph of a book, and start even smaller. Watch one YouTube video in English. So that's what we're building up to as part of this habit score sheet lesson plan. The next important part, this comes from the book as well, is this idea of implementation intentions. This is based on some research from the UK. They worked with 248 people. The idea was they took these 248 people, split them into groups, and they were looking at ways to get people to build better exercise habits. So they had 3 different groups. Group 1 was the control group. All they did is they asked them, you have to track how often you exercise, okay? Write down, honestly, every time you exercise. That was all they had to do. Group 2 was known as the motivation group. They had to track their exercise. They had to read materials on the benefits of exercise. So they're given lots of leaflets about how important it is to exercise. They were also given a presentation on the reduced risk of heart disease and improved heart health. Okay, so someone came in, gave them a slideshow presentation on this. Then they had their, shouldn't be called the motivation group, should be something else. Oops, never mind. The third group. They had everything that group 2 had, okay? Materials, presentation, and tracking. But they were asked to formulate exactly when and where they would exercise. So they basically had to fill in a sentence saying, during the next week, I will do 20 minutes of exercise on this day, at this time, in this place. This is what we call an implementation intention. Okay, so you're intentionally saying exactly when you're going to implement this habit. Okay, so it could be, I will do 20 minutes of exercise on Monday morning at 8 a.m. in the living room on my yoga mat, for example. The results. So groups 1 and 2, they had 35 to 38% of people exercise once a week. Okay, so the motivational presentation alone seemed to have little effect. We all know that, yes, we should exercise and it's good for our heart. Whether or not we act on that information is another matter. They found that group 3, 91% exercised at least once a week. So the idea of this implementation intention seems to, in this study, have had a massive impact on whether or not people exercised. So yeah, we're filling in this sentence. I will do X on, day, at, time, in, place. It's also proven to increase voter turnout. They've used it in the US to get more people to vote. Some of these pushes to vote they've had in various different states. They've got people to say, okay, exactly where will you vote? How will you get there? And they've discovered that it helps more people turn out. I've also used it to increase the frequency with which I see my friends, Sam and Amy, in Castelldefels. So I have two friends who live in a town just outside Barcelona. They've moved out there with their family, and it's like, you know, even though they're an hour away, we don't see each other as often as we used to. So we make implementation intentions, me and Amy, afterwards, make a WhatsApp group and set a date for the next time we're going to see each other. That way we see them more often. So we can use this implementation intentions in our classroom in this initial class. So everyone in the class at the end of the first lesson should leave with their implementation intention written. And you can explain why you're getting them to do this. So you can show them the previous slides of this presentation. You can buy the book and get the information, or you can screenshot it, or you can watch this video back and get all that information, share the research with them, tell them why you're making them write out these sentences and share them with each other, including you. So you have to also commit to your students that you're going to take on a new habit, and you're going to explain it to them exactly when you're going to do it. Okay, so then you've got some pressure from your students as well. And record them. Okay, write down exactly where and when, what they've said they're going to do. So this is one I used 2 years ago with one group of C2 students. We had Monse said she was going to, on the bus, she was going to do some Quizlet. They were going to saying when they're going to do some Quizlet at 8:15 on the way to uni, and then she gets to listen to some music as a reward. Okay, or others said at the desk or before bed. These ones are very specific. Maria was like, going to be on the way to uni exactly 11:30. I get a snack as a reward. I also had them choose some sort of reward for them doing some Quizlet work. And then we tracked watch days, the X's in the boxes, are the days that they actually did it. So they filled in this 1 week, and then the following week we had a look and see if it worked. And we get them to set a reminder in their phones, okay? Harness the dark arts of mobile phone technology so that they get a little pop-up. Oh, you're on the bus. Oh, you need to be doing Quizlet. We can also get them in their notification on their phone. We can get them to copy-paste the link to the flashcard set on Quizlet. So when it pops up, they get an immediate link on their phone and they click on it. It's another part of the make it easy, the third rule, which we're going to look at later on. Making it as easy as possible for them to access the materials. Anyway, back to implementation intentions. So the next class, the following class, say you've got like a Tuesday, Thursday, or a Monday, Wednesday group. First class of the year, you use this lesson plan as your icebreaker. And then on the following class, check back in, say to them, right, was it doable? Did you complete what you said you were going to do? What went wrong if you didn't? What went wrong? I've got to do some spell checking. What needs changing? So maybe Monse discovered that the bus, she said, I'm going to do it on the bus. The bus was too noisy, or her friend gets on that bus, and so they end up just chatting, or she was too tired. So they can make some adjustments, okay? If it wasn't doable, then when could it be doable? So for example, for me, I found I was trying to read, and one of my things was I wanted to read this book, Thinking Fast and Slow, which is quite heavy, and you really need to be focused. I was trying to read it at 11:30 p.m. before I went to bed. It's like the wrong time of day to be reading something that heavy. I need to be reading, I don't know, some Stephen King or something more interesting. Not interesting, but more easier to process, let's say. Or maybe there are too many distractions, and we get them to make adjustments, okay? When could be a better time to do this? So, as I said, do as I do, not as I say. So you need to commit to it yourself as well, okay? You're not just saying it to them, you're doing it with them. So what I did with my students was I asked them, I said, I want to improve my Spanish. I want you to recommend some books, some podcasts, YouTube channels, recommendations for me. They gave me some good recommendations of podcasts and a couple of books to read as well. And if you start that sort of I don't know what, like, relationship with your students where they recommend things to you, you can recommend things to them. You sort of open it up with them giving you recommendations first. It's a bit better than you just saying, you should read this, you should read this. Okay. Or Quizlet sets for Spanish idioms. I'll share that QR code with you guys later. Be a role model and be honest. Okay. If you slip up, tell them, oh, I slipped up. Oh, I wasn't feeling it, up to it that day. Okay. Oh, here's the QR code. There we go. That's the QR code to the Spanish idioms set. I'll leave it on the screen for a moment. If everybody wants, I think there's like 250 Spanish idioms for you if you want to study. Anyway, so further uses. What else can we use implementation intentions for? We can use it for when they need to do their homework. So, for example, I'm teaching specifically proficiency most often. I sometimes teach advanced and first certificate. If you're setting your exam practice groups a writing, for example, you want them to do an essay at home, get them to think about, oh, what do you need to do this homework? What do you need? For example, if they're doing an essay or doing like a gap text reading, like one of the complex Cambridge reading tasks, what do they need? They need a quiet place. They need the time limit, 45 minutes to do the writing, or 20 minutes to do the reading. When in your timetable will you have these conditions? Okay, so have them think a bit about where and when they're going to be able to do this essay without being distracted. Okay, so they can say things like, I will write my essay in the library at uni from 2 to 2:45 on Wednesday, because they know they will have those conditions. Okay, so thinking a bit more mindfully about, you know, what they really need and when they will have access to that. I found this works a lot. I said it for, you know, towards the end of the year with my C2 students. In my school, they're very strict on writing. They have to do a writing every week. And I found basically from April on, I was getting like 3 out of 16 students doing their writings, like just the 3 I told you about earlier, Jose, Laia, and Joanne, basically. And the others just dropped off. And then one week I was like, right, no, you've got to decide, you've got to do your implementation intentions. And I think it went from about 3 to about 10 out of 16. So it was like, and that's, oh, damn, I've got to do all these corrections. But no, it's good. We want them to do their writings. So it works. Okay, moving on to the second rule of behavior change, make it attractive. So some examples from the book. One is temptation bundling, this idea of bundling a habit that you need to do, like a good habit that you're supposed to be acquiring, for example, exercising, with a habit that you want to do. So this guy from Ireland developed something called Cycle Flicks. He attached an exercise bike to the TV, and Netflix deactivated if the speed drops below a certain amount. So it's basically made it into the exercise bike into a generator that keeps the TV running. And he said he's eliminating obesity one Netflix binge at a time. So it's this idea of pairing habits we should do or need to do with habits we want to do. So how can we do that without inventing that machine? I don't know. He should start selling the Cycle Flicks. I think it would be very popular. So the idea is to stack a habit you need to do, a good habit you're trying to acquire, after one of your current habits. So you're bundling it, you're wrapping that habit together. So the idea is that eventually, as it becomes part of your habit, you automatically do the good habit you're trying to acquire after doing the other habit. So for example, after I wake up, I'll open Quizlet and study one Spanish idiom. After I've studied one Spanish idiom, I will read the BBC football gossip page. Okay, because that's my little reward. Okay, the thing I do every morning. Okay, so you're sort of fitting in a good habit in there, and then using the other one as a reward for it. Okay, so learning this expression, aquí hay gato encerrado, which I think means there's something fishy going on, right? Yeah. And then I get to read about the transfer. So For example, after I make my breakfast, I'll read one page of one of these books while I'm eating. Okay, so rather than watching YouTube straight away, I have to read a page of one of these books. Then I get to watch a YouTube video. Okay. So I want you to think, maybe put some in the chat now, bundling some temptations. What rewards or other habits could you do after the habit you're trying to acquire? Put some in the chat now. So as we said before, after you've had them do their implementation intention, you can have them think of a reward, something that they get for having completed their habit. Okay. So the third rule of behavior change is to make it easy. So this is one we were talking about, things like the fruit bowl, to make it as easy as possible, but it's also about designing your environment. Okay, removing any roadblocks to you doing the desired habits. Okay, the classic things are stuff like, if you want to go to the gym, you get all your stuff ready the night before in a bag, so that all you have to do is roll out of bed, pick up the bag and go. Or some people sleep in their gym clothes and then just jump out and go for a run. So it's like, yeah, making it as easy as possible for you to do it. So the habit might not be easy, but the route to it should be. Because every little barrier, it doesn't matter how small the barrier is, it gives you an excuse not to do it, right? If you wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, you're like, oh, I didn't pack my gym bag. That means I need to open my drawer, choose clothes, put them in my bag. Oh, I didn't take the towel out yesterday, it's going to stink. I'm just going to stay in bed. Okay, so smoothing the path towards the good habits. So we can do this, apply this to the classroom with some elements of environment design, so designing the classroom to encourage good habits. So for years, I've been using vocab cards like this. On the right, we have different colors. Teaching C2 and C1, you know, there's lots of idiomatic expressions that come up, jump at the chance, snap out of it, cut to the chase, all things like this. So I keep this big bank of vocab cards for all the emergent language that comes up. And basically I leave them on the tables at the start of the class, just put like a bunch of them on all the tables, go around, so that when the students come in, they're waiting for other people to come in, waiting for me to set up, they can just start playing with them. Okay, so they can immediately start recycling vocabulary. I also started using these things called retrieval practice placemats, which we'll look at in a moment. I also give them access to colored pens. So, you know, teaching university age students, I'm sure lots of you teach teenagers as well. Sometimes you're lucky if they turn up with a pen at all, or like one scrap of paper that they're trying to write all their notes on. So I've just got a big, put it around here somewhere, I'm not sure where it is. I've just got a big bag of colored pens. And I'm just like, if anybody needs a colored pen, and I say to them, have you got a colored pen? Like a different colored pen, not like a normal writing pen, so that they can annotate their notes, so they can underline things, so they can write the translation or a synonym in a different color, to make their notes easier to read. And I give them out and I expect them back at the end of the class. So looking at some retrieval placemats. These ones come from this very good book, which is called Retrieval Practice by Kate Jones. So they're basically activities to provide practice for retrieving information from long-term memory. The idea that, you know, the information might still be in your long-term memory, but if you don't practice pulling it out of there, you're going to forget it completely. She comes from the perspective of a secondary school teacher. She doesn't work in language learning, but we can apply a lot of her ideas to second language acquisition. She teaches specifically politics and history, I think. The idea is to encourage retrieval with no notes. So the idea is that they're not looking back on the notes from the previous class. They're trying to retrieve and remember the things, you know, pulling them out of their brains. So this is one of the ones she uses. This is specifically for the subject she teaches. So what keywords did you use or learn last lesson? State 3 key facts from last lesson. So they might have been studying a particular period in history and its implications. Ask your partner 3 questions based on the content. explain the key concept, okay? So it's more focused towards studying subjects like history and politics rather than languages. So I made an ESL themed one, which is on the blog, you can download. I went on Canva, made this very quickly. Place this placemat on the desk in front of the students. And again, like while they're waiting for people to arrive during the first few minutes of class, get them to start asking and answering these questions, okay? Or you could just project it onto the screen if you've got a projector. And we're maximizing class time. So all those little minutes at the start where we're waiting for people to arrive, they can be doing things, okay? And we want to emphasize that they're not supposed to be opening their notes and showing their notes to their partner, okay? Like what grammar did we cover? What topics did we discuss? Do you have any doubts about the homework? 5 new words or phrases. And obviously, how's it going? Check in on them, how they're feeling. Another one is this one that I use for pair work. So when you have them working on use of English, for example, or any sort of practice activities, have this on the desk and they can use it. So when they're checking their answers with their partner, they're doing it in English. Okay, what do you think about number 1? Well, I think it could be B, or number 2 is A, isn't it? Well, it's definitely not B, certain. I'm absolutely certain it's C. I haven't got a clue, okay? So they're discussing it in English, and then they're responding to what their partner said, okay? So it's good sort of training wheels for doing everything in English, because obviously teenagers especially will switch back to Spanish for this type of interaction. We encourage them to use English at all times. Like I said, they are training wheels. The idea of using things like these placemats is that eventually we don't need them anymore. We'll take them away and they'll walk in, they'll sit down and they'll recap what they did in last class automatically, and they'll do all their task checking in English, okay, hopefully. But stuff like, for example, the example for me is one of my things is I wanted to floss every day, and I used to track my flossing. Oh, I flossed today. But now I've got to the point where after I brush my teeth, I floss. I don't need the tracker anymore. So yeah, take the placemats away and off they go. Some other examples of retrieval practice tasks is something called a retrieval grid that's also taken from Kate's book. So what she does is she designs this retrieval grid. This one's specifically for designed for people from, famous people from history. And at the start of the class, she projects this grid onto the board, and they choose a square from the grid, and they have to write as much as they can about the topic without notes. Okay, so they spend 5 minutes or 3 minutes just scribbling down everything they can remember about Marie Curie or Louis Pasteur, for example. Then they can check their notes and they can add to what they wrote, but in a new color, a different color. Then the following class, they are presented with exactly the same grid, with the same 9 people, but they choose a different square, okay? So then they choose someone else the next time and they write about them. So this idea, we can take this idea and use it for ESL. So we can use this when we're a few weeks into the course and you've covered enough content. So for example, these are some of the things I covered with my C2 students. We did some sports expressions, we did inversions, reporting with passives, and some tips like exam technique tips. Okay, so we can put grammar points, exam technique, lexical sets, functional language. Again, they recall as much as possible, writing it as they can. You can put them in pairs to work on it together as well to make it more communicative. Then they need to change the color of their pen, and then they can look at their notes and see which ones they didn't get. So for example, and you keep the same grid. So we've used this grid for several classes down the line. I'll show you an example of what I mean. So maybe they went for sports expressions. Okay, they remembered these ones: bring your A game, not cut corners. They made a mistake with up your game. They said put up your game. Okay, and then they forgot these ones, these 4 at the bottom. Okay, so then after they'd done the recall of the ones in black, they changed the color, looked at their notes, and then they wrote out the 4 that they forgot. Okay. Another way, so Kate uses this retrieval grids. Something she does for the retrieval grids is she, depending on how long ago they studied the content, is worth more points. The idea being that, you know, they haven't recalled this information for a long time, it's not as fresh in their memory. So if they choose one of the black ones, they get more points. Okay, she makes it more of a competition. So I've taken this idea, this concept, and applied it to the vocabulary cards I use for recycling vocabulary. So I now write on my vocabulary cards the dates in the corner. You can see here, November 2020, May 23, or the exact dates. Okay, so anytime you're writing one of these cards out with some language that came up in class, or you're getting your students to write these cards, you can get them to do it as well. Add the date. Okay, and then when they're playing games, so I get them to play games like Heads Up, where they have to put the cards on their forehead and the partners describe it to them. You can say you get 3 points if it's one from, you know, November, or you get 4 points if it's one from September. Okay. Yeah, the games I play, Heads Up, Sabotage. Sabotage is one where you give them all like 10 cards in pairs, they put it on the table, and one has to choose the card that the other one has to define. So they're trying to choose the most difficult ones. Okay, they're trying to sabotage their partner. Otherwise, if they're playing Heads Up and they get to one they don't know, they just go pass. Okay, and they never practice any of the difficult ones. The Sabotage, you know, they're encouraged to cover the more difficult ones. We also do a table gallery, put all the cards face up on the table. And they have to mingle and go around and try and recall the meaning and the context that the expression came up. Online environment design. So things we can do for our online classrooms to make it as easy as possible for students to access extra materials or materials like Quizlet, things like that. So we take the Amazon approach. You want to have as few clicks as possible to get to this material, harness the dark arts of Amazon and smartphones and things like that for the power of good. So, you know, Amazon is like, buy the Marmite now. You only have to click once. So what I've done is I've actually customized the banner page at the top of my Google Classroom, put them Quizlet materials there, so they could just like open their phone and click, and they're immediately into Quizlet. And it's sort of popping up everywhere, trying to get them to click on it. Just to try and drive more students towards the materials. Again, like we said before, they can set the reminder and add the link to the reminder. Something else I created for my C2 students is we did this idea of a boot camp where we were like going to work intensely on specific parts of the exam. They were really in the run-up to taking the exam. I designed this PDF on Canva where they just only have to click on the links on here, and they can get immediate access to Google Docs with these extra practice on. So they only have to open one PDF, and from there they can immediately have access to all this stuff. So you're taking away all the barriers to them actually doing extra practice outside of the classroom. I can share the boot camp on the blog as well. It's not there yet, but I will put it up. It's reminding me of all the things I have to add to the blog. We're running out of time. Let's have a quick look at this. So the 2-minute rule, the idea of the 2-minute rule is that if you have a new habit, it should take you less than 2 minutes to do. Okay, this idea being that it's not how long you do something, it's how many times you do it. So to actually acquire a new habit, it's more important that you do a tiny bit every day over, you know, the research, 21 days, some people say it can take longer. So the idea is that just getting up and doing one push-up in the morning is better than not exercising. And it's better than going to the gym for an hour and a half once and then stopping completely. The idea is to master the art of showing up. You only have to show up, because starting, as we all know, is the hardest part. So we can set your students the challenge. You know, they only have to read a paragraph when we're trying to get them into reading. Then they have to read a page. Okay, they only have to listen to 2 minutes of a podcast. They only have to study one expression. But we all know with Quizlet, it's very difficult to open Quizlet and just look at one card. It's very satisfying to like flip through a couple more cards. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible and really emphasizing that they only need to do a tiny little bit. Let's look at the fourth rule. So making it satisfying. So habit tracking. Did you know that Benjamin Franklin habit tracks? This is well before all these apps and things we have for it now. He had a little notebook with 13 virtues. And these are things he tried to do every day. So one of them was lose no time, be always employed in something useful. So basically he was anti-procrastination way back then. He also said avoid trifling conversations, one of his things. And then every day he was like, oh, did I manage to do these things? Basically stop procrastinating. He also wanted to get off Twitter. That was one of his big things. Jerry Seinfeld's one was just write one new joke a day. It was just I have to write one joke a day. Any more is a bonus, just have to do one. Okay. So habit trackers, we can get our students using habit trackers. The one I used was Loop Habit Builder. So these were some of the habits I tried to do, and most of them I've taken on. No sweets or chocolate, no screens before bed, being a good husband, no social media. Most of these I've stuck to. And you track your habits, and it shows you lots of data about like the days and your streaks and things like that. It's a very good one. You choose your habits, set them up, track them each day. So you can get your students to download this one. This one's free. And get them to set just a few simple ones, like study one expression, read for 5 minutes, things like that. With the reading ones, for example, you can set it by quantity. So it says down here, look, I read 8 pages on the 7th, 8 pages on the 8th. Then on the 11th, I read 11 pages. They also have to maintain their streaks, and they can look at the data. You can set yourself targets. I want to read 8 pages a day, for example. So then, but there's a slightly more interesting one. This one's called Habitica. It's also a habit tracker, but it gamifies it. Okay. So you earn experience and you level up your character by completing your tasks. You have a little avatar like this, and it's a bit like Dungeons and Dragons. You level up. You can choose if you're like a wizard or a fighter or a rogue, and then you can get all your students to join a party. This app's free as well. You can get them all your students to join this party, and then by doing their habits, they fight a boss together. So it's like if you've done all your habits, like your daily reading, your flossing, and going to the gym, then you do more damage to the boss. Okay, so you'll be fighting the feral dust bunnies. And at the end of every day, it calculates how much damage each member of the team has done, and how much damage. So if you don't do your habit, then the feral dust bunny bites you, and you lose hit points. Okay, and you can click on it and see which members of the team have been doing their habits, so you can tracking what they're doing. So it's a fun way of getting all the class involved in a sort of common goal and some accountability as well. Like I said, yeah, you see the daily report of the damage each party member has done. So it's a nice way of sort of gamifying habit tracking. So get them to download a habit tracker, start small, like I just said, and they can add more habits that they want. If they're interested in getting more into exercise or cutting their screen time, they can add these extra things as well, as much as they like. So keep checking in, make it communicative, get them to open their trackers in class and compare, show off their streaks and things like that. Okay, and then yeah, the group quest and Habitica makes them more competitive and collaborative. Quizlet also has weekly streaks, so if you use it every week, it keeps track of it. You can create a class on Quizlet to share flashcard sets, and you can add your students, get your students there, and you can spy on them. So you can click on their profiles, and you can see what they've studied, whether they've studied or not. So it's a good one for habit tracking and spying. Yeah, this is like an example. This is Joanne. This is all the things he studied. I can see in April he studied this, and in March he studied that. Good. Before and after picks. Let's see if we have time for this. So feedback tracking. Okay, something I've done this year is with a big Excel, just tracking when I do all their writing corrections, to track the feedback I've given them. So this is one of my students, Carolina. And I have this Excel where I have the task they did, the strengths, the improvements, the language, and the mark they got. And I share this with the students so they can see it. And just by having it all in one place, you can track and keep an eye on, are they actually taking on board your feedback? So for example, here in the game review, she had no hook. She didn't have like a way of drawing in the reader, like an engaging way to draw the reader in. And then, yeah, here we go, no hook, draw the reader in. Later on, yeah, they can see the development in the writing as your comments change. You can also track class-wide issues. Okay, so if you see all of them are making mistakes with linkers or with specific tenses, you can be like, right, we need to focus on this in class. Okay, maybe they don't know how to structure their paragraphs. Right, we need to do a 45 minutes on paragraph structure. Okay, maybe they're all getting the register wrong. They're writing far too informally in a report, for example. Yeah, like I was saying. So, for example, she was writing without hooks. She wasn't drawing the reader in. And then later on, when she did another review, this is a video game review, she had a great hook. So she'd actually taken on board, read what I said, and adapted to it. So yeah, it makes it, maybe it's a bit more work, but when you're typing out your comments for their writings, any feedback you give them, keep them all in one place, share it with the students so they can track it and you can use it as before and after. Also for speaking, so if you're doing exam preparation classes, get them to do a before recording. Okay, get them to record themselves doing like a long-term speaking, like a picture description, one from first certificate or advanced, and send it to you. Give them no indication of what language you want them to use as their before one. Okay, just do the writing, the speaking in class and record it. Send it to me, then we'll work on it in class, and then you can provide feedback on their initial attempt. The work on speaking skills in class. We look at things like discourse management, repair strategies, ways that they can dig themselves out of holes if they don't know what to say. And then they re-record it, they send it to you, and then we can compare them at the end of the year. We can track their progress. So again, it's like making it satisfying. They can see their attempt 1 and how much better they've got with attempt 2, attempt 3, further down the line. Okay. This is pronunciation, personalized pronunciation worksheets. I saw this at the APAC conference a long time ago. A guy, can't remember his name. I want to find him someday and thank him for this. It's a great idea. It's taking individual words, specifically for looking at pronunciation of individual words, that they tend to struggle with. So, for example, all these ones on here are silent letters, right? Answer, debt, doubt, island, castle. Horrible ones for Spanish speakers. We put them all in a column like this. The students go away and investigate the pronunciation. You do not give them any help with it. Okay, they have to go away. They go to a website called How'd You Say, or they can go on YouTube, or they go on Google. They have to look up how this word is pronounced. Okay, then they record themselves on WhatsApp or on their phones, just listing these words. So they go like answer, debt, doubt, island, and then they record it, send it to you. All you give them as feedback in attempt 1, for example, is a tick or a cross. A yes, that's good, or a no, that's not good. And then they have to go away and work on it themselves. Okay. So it increases learner autonomy. It teaches them how to improve their pronunciation themselves. And they use the notes column for personalized reminders. So they could put, for example, they could write, if they know how to write in phonemic script, they can, or they could just write it sort of phonetically in Spanish. And the idea is that they slowly see across attempt 1, attempt 2, attempt 3, attempt 4, slow, gradual improvement, 1% improvement until hopefully by attempt 4, they're seeing all of these. And they can share their audios with you on WhatsApp, or they can email them to you if you don't feel comfortable connecting with your students on WhatsApp. So it's a way of ironing out those pronunciation issues. And it's satisfying for them. They can see, go from attempt 1, lots of crosses, to attempt 2, attempt 3, we're seeing like more ticks gradually. How are we doing for time? Am I okay to continue? Cool. Okay. So from how to what? So we talked a bit about how to adapt these habits, how to implement these habits let's think about a bit more about what these habits are. So one of them we talked about is a phrase a day, just getting them to study a little bit of vocabulary every day. So in a school year, right, from October to June, 9 months minus holidays, about 31 weeks. So it works out as about 217 days, right? So let's just round it down to 200 expressions. They could learn 200 expressions of vocab items in a year if they studied one a day. And obviously, we're just doing some studying and some memorization, introducing the language. Obviously, they need further work to properly assimilate this language. We know that we don't just assimilate language or acquire language by studying on a Quizlet card. They need to do further practice in terms of using it in speech, using it in their writing, encountering it in audios, encountering it several more times written down. But it all helps. Every little helps. We can tie this language into classroom games and tests and speaking activities in class. Okay, this link here, this QR code links to a C2 phrase a day folder that I created on Quizlet that has, I think, the first 5 weeks, is ready for the first 5 weeks of the year. I'm going to keep adding to it, and also if anybody else wants to collaborate on this project and make these folders for other levels, feel free to get in touch. So it'd be great to build up this big database of 7 expressions in the folder, very easy for them to access. As we said, tying into rule 3 about making it as easy as possible for them to get to. Yeah, let's go. C2 expressions for weeks 1 to 5 there. Reading. So obviously we know that extensive reading programs are by far the most effective ways to get students to improve their proficiency. Has so many benefits. If you have a high level or like B2 plus group who are engaged and motivated, I definitely recommend trying to read a novel with them. So you can take a novel and break it down into sections, depending on how long your course is. Maybe they read a chapter every month, maybe less, depending on your group. And then every week, a little 10-minute discussion. I always have it at the start of the second class of the week. So if you've got a Tuesday, Thursday group, first 10 minutes of the Thursday class, you're giving them as much time as possible to have done the reading. And you just have to prepare a few little questions on that chapter. Don't need to specifically focus on any vocabulary because we're just trying to do it for enjoyment. If they've got vocabulary questions, encourage them to bring them to class. You have to keep the momentum up. If you keep saying, because only 4 or 5 of them have read it out of 10, if you keep postponing it, then the ones who are into it and reading, they'll lose their motivation, okay? So things will start to flag. It's not actually that much of an issue if only half the class have read the chapter, because you pair them with someone who hasn't, and then they have to explain it to the other one, and the actual onus is on them to explain it well, because the other person needs to understand what's happened in the chapter. Okay, and you can be like, you're getting spoilers, you should have done the reading. But like I said, it has to be engaged, motivated groups. It doesn't work with all groups. If you want some recommendations for sort of simple-ish ones, the Curious Incident of the Dog of the Nighttime, it's a good one to use at B2, I think. The Richard Osman ones are really good, and they're full of lots of real British English expressions. They're packed. All the voices of the characters are very authentic. You get loads of good vocab out of it. Short stories, a bit more manageable. Some that I've used, there's a really good one that you can get for free online called The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu. It's part of his compilation of short stories, but the Paper Menagerie is available online. I've done it with my C2 group. I think it's you can do it with high B2s and C1s as well. It's not very long. It's a really beautiful story about Chinese immigrant family moving to the USA, and lots of issues about integration of immigration and things like that, immigrants and things like that. It's a really beautiful story, and it's not very long. And we had some wonderful discussions in class based on it. If you want something a bit darker, you can read The Landlady by Roald Dahl. It's a dark horror. It's only about 6 pages long, which is very nice. There's this book by Ted Chiang, which is Stories of Your Life. One of the short stories is the short story that Arrival, the film, was based on. So they're really good short stories to use with students. More suggestions welcome. If anyone's come across any specific short stories, I want to build up like a database of short stories we can use in class as well. So feel free to get in touch and let me know. Articles, good articles, places to get good articles for use in class and outside of class. I really like this website called I Effing Love Science. It's very good. I've used it for developing some lesson plans on the blog. This is one I've made called Goat versus Bear, which is a really fun article about the goat fighting a bear. And they've got loads of really good other articles on there, written in a nice, engaging style. Other ones I've been using a lot in class, The Guardian have lots of things. One is You Be the Judge. I don't know if anybody knows this column, but it's very good. People write in and they say, my friend is addicted to their phone and I think they need to go on a detox. And then the two halves of the conversation present their arguments. And then at the bottom, readers of the article can vote on who they think's in the wrong or not. It's very good for conversation starters, and there's loads of really great language. How I use this article, for example, is I set one for homework. We discuss it in class, and then I say, you've got to read another one, but you get to choose. They've been running it for months and months and months, and there's like 30 different You Be the Judges columns. And they just click on whatever one they're interested in, they have to read that, and then discuss it for the next class. Another good one from The Guardian is My Bad Trip. People talking about bad travel experiences, which is really interesting. Another one's called How I Met. There's couples talking about how they got together. It's quite interesting. Reddit's really good for Am I the Asshole, which is similar to the You Be the Judge. People write in and think like, am I in the wrong in this situation? Okay. Am I the asshole for moving out of my apartment so my brother can have it? Okay. So they're interesting. They generate good debates, and they're written in very natural English. We've actually made an episode of our podcast, Two Teas in a Pod, based on Am I the Asshole, which you can access via this QR code. I'm pretty sure that's what that QR code is. Something to do with extensive reading and listening, offering choice. What I do with my students is I offer them choice. So here, this is the homework I set for them. Homework 1, you have to do your writing video game review. Task and example are below. Homework 2, you choose one article or one podcast to listen to. Okay, so they've got a bit of choice. Maybe they're not into science. Maybe they don't have time to listen to a podcast. They just have to listen to or read one. We're trying to encourage a reading or listening habit. 2 articles and 1 podcast I typically do, or 2 articles and 2 podcasts if they're short podcasts. Then they go away, they do one of the reading, one of the listenings, and then they come in, put them in groups, and they discuss what they read or listened to. And it doesn't matter if one of them didn't read a different thing or listen to a different thing, because there's an opportunity, an information gap, an opportunity to discuss. Some read one thing, some read another. And then you can leave the same 3 choices for the following week. Okay, so you don't have to keep constantly coming up with more stuff, because they can just choose a different one from the list. So the interest may have been piqued. Maybe they listened to what their partner said in class, like, oh, that sounds interesting, I'm going to listen to that podcast episode. Or maybe their partner didn't explain it very well, and they're like, I didn't really get any of that, I think I better read it. That's the end of what's this talk? It's I can't, my brain's fried. Anyway, that's the end. But it's a call for collaborators. This is my email address if you want to get in touch. These are underscores, Tim_RD_Warre. Like I said, I'm just sort of still developing the system, developing the idea, and it would be great to get other people to collaborate or make suggestions. Developing the phrase of the day for other levels, the Quizlet sets, for example. More recommendations for extensive reading and listening. any more research that everybody's done or is aware of into effective study habits would be great. I really want to push this and explore this system more because I think there's definitely something there. And I'm definitely open to any suggestions or comments. So feel free to drop me a line.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No worries.
I've been populating the comments with all of your fabulous website ideas. So yeah,
Okay,
lots of
cool.
great hints and tips for our classes. And one thing that I thought about fairly near the beginning was so often we kind of think about setting a really clear objective. Whereas the thing that sounds really good about this Atomic Habits is it's not necessarily that you have a really clear goal.
Yeah.
But just kind of incrementally you build things up. So it's not like I want to pass my C2 exam. It's just I want to be a better Spanish speaker.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's really cool. Because I think
Yeah.
so often we kind of go, oh, you know, you must have these SMART goals, you know, specific, measurable. And then when you don't get to that goal, you feel like a failure. Whereas, like you say, just building things up slowly is a really good way to get better at things.
Yeah,
Awesome.
he talks a lot about the importance of identity, right? You're not supposed to identify a goal, you're supposed to identify an identity that you want to become. I want to be an intellectual. Intellectuals read, so I'll read. I want to be a runner, not I want to run a marathon. That's exactly what you're saying, yeah.
Well,
nice.
Thank you so much for coming
No
along
worries.
today.
It was really fun.
Yeah, and I'm inspired to be a runner again. And I've also put one of my implementation intentions is I'm going to plank for a minute in the morning in the kitchen before I go for a walk. So, and I've got the accountability now that it's in the hub. And at least Karen probably will be checking in on me because she saw the comment.
Brilliant.
Cool. Thank you so much for everyone that was watching. If you're watching on catch up and you've got any other questions, do feel free to drop them in the chat. And as Tim says, you know, he's really open to working with other people on building these banks of C1 phrases and looking for other suggestions to help our learners. Have a fabulous day, everyone. Remember to write your implementation intention and let us know how it gets on.